Not at all. And here you look forward to it, you know? I'm like, am I gonna have to put fenders on my back on my bike? What's going on?
know, we in the city too.
Did it? I was inside, so I missed it. I went and mowed my lawn afterwards.
Oh my.
I think so. There's just little chairs, but probably scoot all those up here.
They're sitting there next to George.
Yeah, I think so.
Jeez.
Hi.
There.
To the end when you're.
Yes.
Did you get my email follow up on that? Yeah, because I saw that, I read the thing and I'm like, wait, that seems like it's going the other way, so I sketched it on a map.
Hello again.
How was your ride?
Very nice.
Excellent. How about you went over here?
Did I say it?
You sent an email, so I'm not gonna be at the meeting, so I guess maybe it's your mic.
No.
Get that email for me?
You stole your chair.
I didn't
Another chair.
send an email with projects.
You know what, maybe it was an old email.
I'm sure it was, because that was, last time I sent
I
an
don't know
email,
what
I
it
thought it
must
was
have looked
a long
like.
time
It's
ago.
like, all these things are on it.
Hmm.
And I was like, that's so weird. I'd read over it, the whole thing.
Hi, how you doing?
Great, how are you? I feel like I'm gonna knock my head. I'm so tall.
I know I would.
Thank you.
Why? Everyone's used to sitting on this side and this side. We do.
I found the gavel over here, so
Oh, maybe you're the one.
maybe I'm the one.
You know, we'll take what we can get. And we know you're a good man. I have to find where I found it.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
From an email. Now, I'm in a no, I'm going crazy, but that's proof. That's probably proof, exactly. Like, yep, you have lost your mind. That's so crazy. Right, so.
Thank you.
Right, have we got a riveting meeting ahead of us?
Nope, not too riveting.
Too much, I don't think.
Not too riveting. You're planning on a nap or?
Well, usually it's bad when it's riveting. You ever go to school board meetings?
Last week.
Oh, yeah.
There's one tonight.
Was it riveting?
Thank goodness. It started at 4 and ended at 10.
Oh, jeez.
Yep. No, I think that one ended at 9. I would think it's a sneak out a little early at 8:30. So, no word from Allison. She should be back in office today, but there was an email between Hugh and Jim Himes. And I said we're gonna send the 2 people from Hannah, Robert and then Christian was hoping to come out for our training. So, was anything working on his videos? Trying to get those done. I hope, I'm sure we can. Post fast. So,
Because I did what I did for the last one we did with Robert. I haven't looked again to see if it's still there.
what do you mean you did, like you just posted your class and?
Yeah, you sign into the LCI
Yeah,
portal.
I can't sign in. And then I've lost my password and I signed in. Nobody will respond to the same password.
Hmm.
So,
So when you go to the LCI portal, then they've got a little menu, and one of them is events. And then
yeah.
you can see your events, and it goes back
I
to
can see
forever.
myself as an LCI in there. Did we get LCI? Are you an LCI? Are you an
That's the agenda. I won't take away the agenda. Okay.
No, I believe we had quorum, right? Oh, yes. Okay, wait, but Rod is not here, right? Rod and Jess are not here. Now that. Mr. Chair, I have 5 o'clock.
So my clock says 5 o'clock, so I'll call this meeting of the Mesilla Valley Metropolitan Planning Organization Bicycle and Pedestrian Facilities Advisory Committee to order. We can have a roll call to establish a quorum.
Okay, Ashley Curry,
Present.
Andrew Bencomo,
Present.
Albert Casillas,
Present.
Marcia Davis,
Present.
Jim Wilcox,
Present.
Harold Love,
Present.
Jess Waller, Jack Kirby,
Present.
Rod McGillivray, Daniel Balderrama,
Present.
okay, and Mr. Chair.
Present.
Thank you.
And approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes or comments on the agenda? Hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved, Andrew Bencomo.
Ashley Curry, second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda has been accepted. Next, we have approval of the minutes of the July 19th meeting. Do we have any discussion on the minutes? I had one comment that I saw, an acronym. On page 32, line 45, it had IBWCS, which should only be IBWC for the International Boundary Water Commission.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure about this, but I was looking at the minutes, and the beginning of the minutes, it talks about the changes offered in the previous minutes. And if I remember right, I thought I had offered changes, but it looks like it's under Mr. Waller instead of Wilcox. But yeah, and I've got my notes on those changes, and they're in here. So unless Mr. Waller thinks he made those comments, I think I made them. Yes.
Mr. Chair, we can make that a correction.
Any other comments on the minutes? Is there a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
So moved, Andrew Bencomo.
Albert Casillas, second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the minutes as amended. All in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Item 4 is public comment. Do we have any members of the public that wish to comment at this time? Seeing none. Action items. We have an MTP amendment, truck route map modification.
And Mr. Chair, this time I'd like to introduce Dominic Lawyer to discuss the amendment.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the BPAC. Today we'll be discussing the Mobility 2045 Truck Routes Map Amendment. This was requested by the City of Las Cruces. They've requested the removal of Melendres Street from South Main to El Molino, the removal of Brown Road from Compress to South Main Street, and the addition of El Molino between Compress and Melendres. So this is the overall truck routes map as we saw the last time. And then we will go ahead and zoom in on the area. Just to remind everybody, this is the area we were talking about. We have Melendres running right here, all the way through, and Brown Road right here running all the way through. And this is El Molino right here that is not currently on the truck routes map. So as I said, these are the areas that we're looking at taking out. This will be the addition. And this will be what it looks like, provided Policy Board approves of it. So looking here, we've gone ahead and gone out and got pictures. So this is Melinda Street right here. This is going into the neighborhood. This is El Molino going west. So as you can see back here, we've got all of the different, basically commercial uses. This is the reason why the city of Las Cruces is asking for El Molino to be added, is this house right here is actually on Melendrez. So it will all, basically it'll be their corner lot, so unfortunately they're stuck with having some of the truck traffic go by, but the actual address is on Melendrez, so they will be off the truck route map. And this is looking at it from the opposite corner. So we can see here, El Molino, this is down towards the industrial area as well as commercial. This is into the neighborhood on the other side. Melendrez is down here towards the industrial area. This will be kept on the map. And this area right here up towards the residential area will be taken off. And just as a reminder, buses do not count as trucks. It is any type of delivery vehicle or hire that are counted as trucks. So, and this is just a quick reminder of how much truck traffic there actually is on the street. So from Melendrez to El Molino to Amador, 10% of the traffic on the street is trucks. When you go from Main to El Molino, it drops down to 3.21%. And then on Brown Road from Valley to Melendrez, the entire stretch is only 0.88%. And then in the area, we also included Maine here because Idaho to Wyatt is that it is in the same area. And as you can see, it's 4.82% that are actually traveling down Main Street in that area, which would be turning on to these roads. So as of today, the 30-day public comment period will close. And then MPO staff is requesting BPAC to recommend this amendment to the policy board. I will now stand for questions.
Do we have any questions from committee members?
Mr. Chair, I do.
Go ahead.
So that one house that you talked about on the corner, currently though, the way that truck routes are now, truck traffic already goes by that house, correct? In both directions, down Melendrez and El Molino, is that correct?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Mancoma, that is correct. So that basically starts the next segment of the Melendrez Street that will be removed, at least on the Melendrez side will be removed. The El Molino side, they're already going by. It'll just be added in as an official part of the truck route map.
Okay, so it doesn't seem like there would be like an additional impact to that house. It just would be concentrated around that turn there by the house, and that's it. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, what factors in the methodology do you think help make you sure that this is a correct count?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox, so these are actually done with our traffic counts program. We have international road dynamics boxes. We put out, when we put out counts, we put out 2 tubes, 10 feet apart, so we can get axle lengths. That's how the box decides what's going over it. It's done by weight, air pressure and axle lengths. So whenever it hits it, it goes, okay, it hit this hard going this direction. And then the second set of tires hits it, it's like, it puts it into a basket that says it's this size. Or in the case of a semi, it's how many axles hit it.
And have you found that methodology to be accurate?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? I guess I thought this was well addressed with our previous session, so I hear a motion to recommend approval of this truck route map modification to the policy board.
Ashley Curry, so moved.
Andrew Bencomo, second.
We have a motion and a second to recommend approval of this MTP amendment to the policy board. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes. Next is 5.2, recommendation to amend the MPO bylaws.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Andrew Ray will be presenting this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Andrew Ray for the record, for MPO staff. This is the action item following up from the discussion item on the bylaws that we had at last month's meeting. I am going to give a high-level presentation, just hitting the high points, not going into detail tonight since we had a discussion about this last week or last month. But the MPO recently adopted a new joint powers agreement, which necessitated a number of changes to the MPO bylaws. The policy board appointed a subcommittee to draft and revise the bylaws. That committee met, agreed to a draft, and the draft was presented to the Las Cruces city manager, and the city manager concurred with that proposed draft. Composition of the policy board will remain the same, with 3 Las Cruces city councilors, 3 Diana County commissioners, 3 Town of Mesilla trustees, and the NMDOT District 1 engineer. We clarified the proxy provision for all of the committees across the board within these draft bylaws. With regards to the policy board, the officers of the policy board remain the same, but the role of the MPO chair codifies some changes and expansions with regards to the powers of the chair. And it has been a matter of some controversy, but it was deemed necessary for the time being at least that the telephonic participation restrictions that exist in the current bylaws be retained in this proposed draft. With regard to the advisory committees, the membership requirements to serve on the TAC were adjusted, requiring that appointees be a deputy director or a director within their respective organizations from CLC, Diana County, and Town of Mesilla. It was specifically stated that the city manager, county manager, and the town mayor have the appointment authority for both the TAC and the BPAC for the representative seats on both the advisory committees from their jurisdictions. And as far as the BPAC is concerned, we codified what had more or less been the unwritten procedure that we had been using for years. We went ahead and wrote that down explicitly as to how citizen appointments for the BPAC are to be handled, and then staff appointments for the BPAC are to be handled similarly to the way that it's done for the TAC. We do also explicitly state a number of the vast majority actually of MPO work products, the federal requirements, et cetera, that must go through the MPO committee process. One of the new powers of the chair is to give an emergency bypass permission for a project to bypass the advisory committees and be considered immediately by the policy board. Again, this was a discussion that we had at the BPAC last month, so I want to make sure we clarify here that this in no way gives the MPO chair the ability to just approve something themselves by fiat. Everything must be approved by the policy board. This provision is only allowing an item to bypass the committees in emergency circumstances only. And if you go in there and read the draft, you'll see that we bracket the permission with this can be only used in emergencies, this can only be used in emergencies. We do have some new penalties with regards to actions or non-actions by members of the board or committee. We do now have, at the recommendation of the City of Las Cruces Attorney's Office, a removal for violation of the Open Meetings Act. Also, we do now have provisions in place to deal with excessive absences by members. Initially, excessive absences are punished by loss of voting rights. We took that procedure from the El Paso MPO. That voting loss can be reinstated after a meeting with MPO staff. However, if the defaulting member never meets with MPO staff, then at the end of a calendar year from the time that they went into default, they would then be eligible to be considered for removal by the policy board. Any member who is removed from either the board or one of the advisory committees for whatever reason is ineligible to be reappointed for the period of 1 year. We also build in a mandatory amendment process for the bylaws. They will be reviewed after the review of every JPA going forward, which translates to every 5 years. It will not necessarily, and I do not anticipate it being an elaborate process such as the one that we have just been through. My expectation is that it will just be an item that will be brought through the committee process. If everyone is satisfied with the function of the bylaws, then that will be taken care of by a vote of the policy board, and we will move on. However, if at any time a member of the board or one of the advisory committees or MPO staff has any changes they would like to be considered, all they need to do is make that request, and we can have a process to review the proposed changes. And unlike the JPA, which requires a 2/3 majority, the bylaws may be amended by a simple majority vote of the policy board. MPO staff requests that the BPAC recommend approval of these draft bylaws to the policy board tonight. We intend to present these bylaws at the policy board meeting on September the 14th. If approved by the policy board, we'll write the resolution in such a way that the bylaws will go into effect on January the 1st of 2023. We will use the intervening time. Everyone is familiar. We have the MPO 101 book. Everyone received that when they first joined the MPO in whatever capacity. We'll be distributing updated materials. The Code of Ethics was specifically mentioned at the BPAC last month. We'll be distributing the CLC Code of Ethics. We'll also be distributing some version of the Open Meetings Act guidance. We'll consult with the city attorney's office for an appropriate brochure. I'm not intending to hand out the entirety of the Attorney General's guidance on the Open Meetings Act, just kind of here's a layperson's what you need to know, and just sort of go through a process to make sure that we have a smooth transition into the new bylaws. And that concludes my presentation, and I will stand now for any questions.
Have any committee member questions?
Mr. Chair, I do.
Drew?
So I probably should have asked the last one because he brought this up then. The definition of an emergency, is that in the?
It is, to some degree, de facto left to the discretion of the MPO officer. All requests that are emergencies would go to the chair for consideration, but the MPO officer makes a recommendation as to whether the situation is in fact an emergency. And there is specific context to this of, we have had it happen 3 times in the past 2 years where we have had substantive changes to TIP projects that have happened in the last 2 weeks before a policy board meeting, which unfortunately, just due to the nature of scheduling and the cycle that we have here at Mesilla Valley, bypasses BPAC. And we as staff don't like this. We have protested this a number of times over the years, but unfortunately the past 2 years with the circumstances that have been in effect in the country, and specifically this year, the problem was caused by cost overruns driven by inflation, where the original grant award was no longer enough to cover the project. And we as staff did not find out about this until too late. I learned, all due respect to Mr. Murphy, he always said there was no such thing as a long-range planning emergency. I have learned over the past 2 years that there is, in fact, such a thing as a long-range planning emergency. So that's the context as to why that's in there. I understand that it will probably happen again, but again, it is to be used very sparingly. We do not want any of our committees to be bypassed. We want full vetting of all of the stuff to go on for everything. But we have had the instances in the past 2 years where it's come up a couple of times, and it has been a genuine, serious problem where project loss was very much on the table if action was not taken. So that's another part of kind of when it triggered of, will this project be jeopardized? Will the money be taken away? Will the project not be able to be completed without action? So I hope that explains the context behind the provision.
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much. That's the context that was great. Thank you.
Any other comments? I guess I saw where email was added as a synonym for in writing.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We did make that change after the suggestion last month.
Hearing no other comments, I'll hear a motion to recommend approval of the bylaw changes to the policy board.
Andrew Bencomo, so moved.
Albert Casillas, second.
I have a motion and a second to recommend approval of the bylaws to the policy board. On favor, aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Hearing none, we're on to discussion items. Truck counts map presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a sort of a treat for you tonight. We're going to have our co-op, Mr. Dylan Taylor, give the presentation this evening. He has been working the past several months on a truck route or a truck count map similar to our interactive traffic flow map. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Dylan Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Dylan Taylor with the City of Las Cruces MPO, and a project I've been working on is mapping out the levels of truck traffic throughout the city and the surrounding area. So for data collection, Mesilla Valley MPO staff performed traffic counts in Las Cruces and throughout Doña Ana County as part of the traffic count program. The data was then processed using MPO classification and speed templates. Truck traffic percentages were taken from the classification reports and then transferred onto a map in ArcGIS Pro. Truck traffic percentage is sorted into 3 different gradients. The traffic counts are done over the course of 50 hours. The data that's collected are volume, classification, and speed, and there are seasonal and daily factors that are used. We use IRD boxes, which stands for International Road Dynamic Boxes, to do the counts. This is an example of a process classification, Delray, Telshore to Bataan Memorial East. And then we're looking here at the AADT, the channel 1 and channel 2 is the traffic going both directions. And at the bottom there is the truck traffic percentage. Again, the truck traffic is anything 5 and above. Looking again, there's also some road condition ratings that we do when we're out there that we factor into this as well. That's kind of a brief overview of the truck traffic map. Again, it's sorted into 3 different gradients there, 3 different shades of blue. This is taking a closer look at East Mesa, up on the interstate, and also Sonoma Ranch and Riconada and places like that. Again, you can see with the legend the 3 different shades of blue. This is zooming in on the interstate and the frontage roads. You can see there's a lot more truck presence there on one of the frontage roads. And then this is looking over at Picacho Hills, seeing activity around there and on the side of town. And then we're looking down Mesilla and South Valley, seeing the truck activity around there. And then this is looking at zoning in on major streets, Amador and Loman and Maine. And this is something that's a work in progress. We're actually doing counts on Loman this week, so that's why there's a lack of data right there. And this is comparing 2 different counts done recently this year on Delray and Missouri. And you can see while they have relatively similar total numbers of traffic, the truck presence on Missouri is significantly more. And then we're comparing here a stretch on Picacho, Motel 17th. While the toll traffic number actually went down, the truck presence doubled more or less. And then this is just looking at a few different segments on Missouri, Travis to Gladys, Gladys to Locust, and Locust to Solano, different amounts there. And the uses for this data are traffic flow map, model calibration, FHWA reporting, safety performance measures, and freight monitoring. Questions?
So these are the normal traffic counts that the MPO does anyways, and you took out the truck portion, is that what you were doing?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And what about like the interstate? Does the MPO, I mean, NMDOT must do counts on some of these roads.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this is Andrew Ray for the record. MPO staff does not do counts on the interstate. It's always been considered to be a safety issue for us. NMDOT is the entity that does the interstate counts. Unfortunately, we don't always have regular access to that information, and so we do not display it on the interactive traffic flow map, nor is that data present on the truck route or the truck count map. I wish I could say that we had hoped to be able to integrate that data on a regular basis, but that's just probably not something that we're going to have consistent access to.
It seems like something NMDOT should be sharing regularly with the MPOs.
You would think, Mr. Chair.
Anybody?
Mr. Chair? Yes. Mr. Taylor, I have a quick question. What's the time period of these counts?
Mr. Chair and committee member, so we go back as far as 2016, but what you're seeing is the most recent counts. So more or less, that's within the past 5 years.
So what I mean is this time period 24 hours, 1 week, 1 month? I mean, when you count, that data that comes in, how many hours have passed, how many weeks, days?
So, Mr. Chair, the counts are 50 hours, and that's done year-round.
How many hours?
50?
50 hours?
Yes, so they're out there for about 2 days, give or take.
Okay, so that count, if it says 10,000 vehicles passed, that's within 50 hours?
Correct, right?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Curry, so it's, so 50 hours is the usual, is the usual time that we use to get these traffic counts. And we do that so we can collect 48 hours worth of data. So all of our data is based on what's collected in that time period.
Great,
But
thank
then it
you.
gets reduced to average daily traffic, doesn't it, in some way?
Mr. Chair, yes. So we use the data that's collected within that time frame. The AADT is collected from there, along with the truck traffic percentages.
Thank you.
Does that answer the question?
So the end result is an average daily count,
An average daily count, and the trucks are included in the average daily count.
right? So you're breaking out the truck and non-truck traffic from the average daily count. That's what this reports.
Correct. Dylan, can you go to the one of the tables that shows the process data? There we go. So we do have the AADT, and then if you scroll further down, we have non-truck total, and those are classes 1 through 4. We also have truck total, and that's the class 5 and up. And so out of the total amount of traffic, that's how we calculate the truck traffic percent.
So that data there is for a 50-hour
Yes.
time period?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so if you were to divide each of those numbers by 50, that would give an average hourly.
Well, we do the 50, usually it's out of the 48 hours. We just do 50 just to give us a margin of error in case anything happens, like if anything were to damage the tubes, or should anything be interfered with, or basically affected by anything else.
Okay, thanks.
So also, when you do these counts, it's like a Tuesday through Thursday you do them? Is that true, or?
Correct, we
how
do.
you just,
We leave them out Monday through Thursday and then Tuesday through Friday.
okay.
Mr. Chair, Jim Wilcox for the record. 2 things. What do we do with the data, and what's considered a high rate of trucks?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee member. So we're using the data to, I guess when people have complaints or we're seeing a major increase, we have to take a look at that and see what's changing, if there's new new businesses coming in, and if there's like for safety reasons, and just for general public. We're seeing increases and decreases in certain areas, primarily increases just because the town is growing. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
What's considered high truck traffic?
I would say in this 15 to 23% area.
Say that again?
I would say in this, the darkest blue one, the 15 to 23%. That's when you're seeing significant percentage.
Now, is that a national standard, or is it where do we get the standard?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox.
Yeah.
So it's relative to basically how much truck traffic we actually have. So in this case, in a lot of cases where you're seeing the 23%, which would be fairly high, would be in places like Amador, down by 17th Street, by Westgate Court, where we have a lot of trucks turning in because there's a lot of industrial uses, or out on Crawford Boulevard by the airport, where there are a lot of industrial uses. So in general, the other thing too is you don't want to see 15% in a residential area. Trucks going through at that rate could cause issues. It's part of the reason why we just had the MTP amendment. That's also what this data is used for, to look at saying, okay, is there a reason for trucks to be going through here? If there is, then it's something that does need to be discussed with jurisdictions. In this case, for the MTP amendment that you just recommended, it was the city came to the MPO saying, hey, we don't believe this should be on there anymore. At one time, there wasn't enough streets in Las Cruces. We need trucks to be able to go through here. Now it becomes an issue of they don't need to be going through there anymore. There's enough access elsewhere.
So when you say it's relative, sir, are you saying it's normative based as opposed to criterion referenced?
Yes, sir.
I guess since I'm on an advisory committee, I can make some advice here. I recommend that there be established numerical equivalents to what is considered high traffic, rather than we've seen a significant increase, because that's relative, so we don't know. Could be high already, and then there's an increase of a little bit, and it wouldn't be considered a significant increase. So if we had a criterion-based, then we could have established metrics for what's considered high truck use. And the other part of it is, do you consider whether the roads that these trucks are on are sufficient to handle the weight of the truck?
Mr. Chair, committee members, so we do road ratings when we're out there, and we take that into consideration in our reports. And I believe that's information that's available to the various planning committees when they're looking at these routes.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Wilcox, Dominic Loya again for MPO staff. So part of that would actually be a question for the engineers as to how much weight should be on the roadways. I do know NMDOT is redoing North Main Street, and that is one of their big considerations, especially in intersections, is that there was issues with trucks going through causing problems for NMDOT. I'm not sure what the city of Las Cruces, what their criteria are, but they do. I do believe the city of Las Cruces also looks at information like that to see where they do need to improve roadways.
So it depends on the committee decision, but I would recommend that we be given some kind of informational session on the effect of different truck weights, axles, on the wear and tear on roads, so that we can make good decisions in the future about if we should be asked questions around that.
Sir, I agree.
Any other member comments?
Mr. Chair,
Andrew?
Andrew Bencomo for the record. Is this presentation and/or the map itself going to be available anywhere for us to see? So we can, because
Mr. Chair,
that was a
yes.
real quick overview of it there. So.
Yes, sir, we brought a couple to look at closer.
Mr. Chair, yes, we have copies, and we would like for everyone after the meeting is adjourned to come down and feel free to take a look at the maps up close and personal.
Okay, were they going to be digitized in the future to find online somewhere also?
Yes, that is our ultimate intention, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
We're on to committee and staff comments. So City of Las Cruces, do you have any comments, updates for us today?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The projects that the city is working on, the university project, that'll be in the winter, late fall. It'll be starting in the late fall. The other one, the Madrid Avenue extension, right now they are currently working on right-of-way acquisition. So that's what the current status on that project is. And once they do obtain the sufficient right-of-way, they will be building it, and the construction phase will be around the 2023. That's it.
Okay, the TAP project, the Madrid Walnut TAP project, that's going to, the bid been completed and accepted?
Yes, the Madrid Walnut project, that is also on the design phase. It's already, they'll be having bike lanes, and from Hadley all the way to Spruce, I believe, and under Evelyn, they'll have signs. We'll be having signs on that.
Right. I just wondered when they're actually going to start construction on that. If that's, I believe the bid's been accepted, and it's in engineering, final negotiations, I think, for,
Yes, sir.
before they actually begin construction.
For the actual
So
construction, yes.
we should hear about when construction actually happens at some point.
Yes, I don't have the date for
Okay,
that.
thank you. Duniana County,
Chair, I don't have any comments.
okay. Town of Mesilla is absent. NMSU,
No updates from NMSU.
I had a question for NMSU on the bicycle-friendly university status from the League of American Bicyclists. Do you know what that is? Whether it's ready, you need to apply again, or how? I think you're close to the 4-year expiration, but
I could be wrong on this, but I believe we've actually passed it, and there's currently no activity to renew that.
okay, well, that's unfortunate.
It is.
Las Cruces Public Schools.
We always have something to say at LCPS. Yes, school is underway. We've been going for about a month. Things are going well. Our next big events are International Walk to School Day, which will be September. And since we don't have a September BPAC meeting, I believe the dates are September 20th to 23rd is the predominant week of our celebrations. And then we have some outlying schools that just walk monthly, and those are mostly the county schools. So I can send out, if you would like, the list of walking school buses and events and dates. We're going to be doing our proclamations at the town and the county and the city in early September and mid-September. And I think that's about it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. NMDOT.
Harold Love, NMDOT. Basically only have one active project to report on, and that's the I-25 from milepost 14 to 24 in Radiant Springs area. That project is still ongoing, pavement preservation project, and we're hoping that work will be completed by the end of September. And that's all I have.
Okay, I have a question that you may not know the answer to, but the capacity study do you know when when that process is going to start, when public meetings are going to happen, and the I-25 capacity study project?
That's a good question, because we're having an update meeting on that next week, in which I could give you an exact answer.
Okay, well, maybe by our next meeting, and we skip a month.
Sure.
You can bring that to us, and maybe it'll be long enough that you'll actually have a schedule by then. Thank you.
Very good.
MPO staff update.
Dominic Lloyd for MPO staff. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as we discussed earlier with Mr. Ray was talking about when an emergency happens, one of the things we've decided to do is also let the BPAC know exactly what was bypassed or TAC in some cases has happened. So we did have 2 projects that for the TIP amendments that ended up in the emergency section due to a NMDOT staff issue. They were having staffing issues. So we have LC 00490, which is the Arrowhead Drive Trail. So that one was approved for TAP funding. So that one did go through, and we've that project is going to be done. And the other one is LC 00500, which is for Safe Routes to School for the coordinator position That is another one that we'll be going through. They were both funded through TAP.
Okay, thank you. And so we're on to committee member updates. I guess the comment that I had, I saw where the federal government has awarded the RAISE grants. In New Mexico, there were 2 projects received the RAISE grant. One was in the Albuquerque Rail Trail, received $10 million or $11 million, which is in addition to the $10 million the state has awarded and whatever other funds Albuquerque has. So indicates that the RAISE grant is very multimodal oriented. The other one was a planning grant in Carlsbad to do a bridge, and the award also mentioned multimodal there. So I guess it wasn't a big surprise that the city didn't get their award for their application on the US 70 from the Spitz-Solano intersection area up to Elks area, which was more capacity building than addressing multimodal issues. So I would hope that the city would take note of that and maybe look towards doing more multimodal type applications for the RAISE grant. Committee member?
Mr. Chair, yes, I have a question from a member of the public to ask the MPO what the progress is on the bicycle facilities map, and when can they expect this to go public, and if this is going to be web accessible.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Curry, this is Andrew Ray from MPO staff. We're hoping next month, and yes.
Great.
Mr. Chair?
Andrew?
Andrew Bencomo. I have a question for the county. The multi-use trail, Elks Drive, from where the empty parking lot is now, used to be a school, down to, all the way down to the Chuckies. Is that going to be in the current space that's between the road and the fence, or is that fence line going to be pushed back a little bit? I know NMDOT said previously in meeting, don't move our fence, but I don't know if that's planned or not.
As far as I know, there's not going to be any movement of that fence. It's just what's there right now.
With the space that's currently there? Okay, thank you. And then speaking of NMDOT, because I was going to bring this up and asked about it, and then it happened. So a huge kudos on the repaving from Loman to University Avenue. That was, oh my God, that pavement was horrible. Now it's buttery smooth, as Ashley would say, it's buttery.
I concur.
Nice.
I go through there every day, so I concur.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And then also, I don't know if George is the one that kind of pointed it out, and then I picked up on it, so thank you, George, for that. Yesterday at the city council meeting, it was on consent, an approval for a grant application matching funds and a grant application for a multi-use trail that will start at University Avenue on the Las Cruces lateral from University Avenue next to the convention center. It's going to run south down along the interstate, connect to the Union Trail that's already there. Then the Union Trail heads west past the Whiskey Dick's nightclub, and then right next to the post office, the lateral that comes under the interstate jumps across the road next to the post office there, and then it'll continue to follow that lateral south to Tortugas Drive, and that's the terminus of that project. So it's about, I think, 1.5 miles. Part of it's already built, so the Union Trail, but that was approved yesterday, so fingers crossed on that project, if they can get the funding for it. Thank you.
Any other committee members? We'll go on to public comment. Do we have any public comment at this point? Seeing none, I'll hear a motion to adjourn.
Ashley Curry, so moved.
Andrew Bencomo, second.
With no objections, we're adjourned. Thank you.